Well, I was wanting to mention something that Syngenta CEO recently said too. He was slamming organic agriculture, and this is his quote directly, and it's certainly a lie. He said that pesticides have been proven safe, and here's the lie, and absolutely not harmful to the environment or humans. That's completely false. If you'll just Google it, pesticide dangers, I mean, we're using over 1 billion pounds of pesticides each year in the U.S., and they have been found to pollute every stream in America, and over 90% of all wells sampled in the study by the U.S. Geological Survey found pesticides in wells, people's home wells. And the National Academy of Science estimated that over about 20,000 cases of cancer are caused each year by pesticide residue on food. The USDA and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service estimated that over 67 million birds and 14 million fish are killed each year. And then we have 26 billion pounds of nitrogen fertilizer applied each year, and not including all the excrement from cows and swine and chicken factory farms in our streams. 26 billion pounds of nitrogen fertilizer is getting into, part of it's getting into our streams, and now we have the dead zone in the Gulf of the Mississippi is now 8,500 square miles. And this is affecting many major rivers around the world, but the Mississippi is one of the worst. I think it may be the worst. 8,500 square mile dead zone. And it's doubled in size since 1985. And this is devastating the coastal fisheries. I mean, in the Gulf region around Texas, around Louisiana, it's devastating the fisheries, the shrimp fisheries too. I mean, shrimp farming or fishing productivity has declined 40%.
And that's because of the algae growth from the nitrogen, and the algae takes up all the oxygen from that water.
Nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizer, as it gets into the water, it causes something called eutrophication or hypoxia, which it causes these algae to bloom. We're seeing this in the Illinois River with the Oklahoma City Tyson lawsuit. It causes this algae bloom when excessive fertilizer gets in the water. The algae dies and it sucks all the oxygen out of the water. It kills all the microorganisms. It kills the fish. So nothing is living in these dead zones like at the Gulf of the Mississippi.
It destroys the ecosystem.
Yes, it destroys everything. And one of the critical factors here too with the Mississippi dead zone, it's 8,500 square miles, is actually we're seeing the dead zone grow. We're seeing it grow massively more now that we're doing this corn-based ethanol. With these massive subsidies that we're giving to ethanol production, we're seeing the dead zone grow even faster. And so it's really unbelievable to me that.
And that's really, it shouldn't be that unbelievable because about half of all the nitrogen fertilizer that we apply goes to eutrophication. The plants don't even use it.
Well, they over-apply it.
Yeah, they over-apply it. And another thing about the pesticides, in the past 2 decades, we've increased our pesticide use by 33%. Each year we lose more crops to pests. And less than 0.1% of the pesticides actually reach the pests that they're intended to kill.
Right.
I mean, so
we're
just wasting
this stuff. They apply it,
yeah.
and in these airplanes, they fly over and drop these these clouds of pesticides on top of these crops, and those clouds drift. And they go into rural communities, and people breathe these things.
And that gets us to genetic modification, because one of the reasons that we do genetic modification is so that plants become more and more resistant to the pesticides that we put on the plants. And so you would think that with that, we would be able to use less pesticides, but really what happens is farmers think, we can use more and more and more.
Certainly with some genetic modifications, that's the case.
That's happening with the soy.
Yeah, with the Roundup Ready.
Well, you look at Monsanto, they're suing farmers that use traditional crops now. Because if I'm a farmer, I'm growing regular soybeans, and my neighbor farmer has Monsanto Roundup Ready soybeans and cross-pollinates. Well, now Monsanto wants to sue for your seeds.
It's their property.
It's their property
rights.
now. Yeah.
It's patent rights over farmers' rights to save seeds, and then that just contaminates. People who are breeding their like there was a farmer in Canada who was breeding his own line of canola. Like this was 50 years work of breeding. And this drift came over, contaminated his plot, and he saved the seeds and grew them out. And I guess I don't know how Monsanto found out, but they tested his plant, found the gene in there, sued him, took it to the Supreme Court of Canada. Monsanto won 5-4 because it was a patented right versus farmer's right to seeds. So all the seeds that this farmer had, he had to give up to Monsanto because he could not prove that genetically modified trait was not in the seeds. So his lifetime work was gone.
Right.
So contaminating the food supply.
That issue was addressed a lot in Food Inc. wasn't it?
Well, Monsanto's coming under a lot of fire. I can tell that they're scared because I saw that they were running commercials during Thanksgiving. Did you see the Think a Farmer commercial for Thanksgiving?
No.
They had
No, I
the
didn't
Think
see
a
that.
Farmer commercial, and then it said Monsanto.
I'm sure
It's like you don't care about farmers.
I think it's really
Monsanto's
unfortunate.
useful
I
to
think
them.
it's really
Yeah.
unfortunate, though, that Monsanto and some of these other corporations are giving, and certainly there's huge reason to be concerned about some of these factors of GMOs, and certainly the Roundup Ready. I think corporate monopolization of genetic information and seeds and things like these are hugely serious issues, and gene flow, things like that. But there are potential, GMO that could be a good thing. Like there was an example of vitamin A being inserted into rice. It was just a gene from a daffodil. Daffodils can produce vitamin A, and rice can't. And putting this gene into, and this was a non-corporate entity creating this, an academic institution or a non-corporate entity. And I think that's sort of the critical issue, is if it's not a corporation doing it, because they tend to do things for profit that are harmful to the public. But if academic or non-governmental or some kind of non-profit seeking entity is developing these, they can have good benefits. With this vitamin A gene, they could put this vitamin A producing gene in the rice, and it would produce tons of vitamin A. And there's people in the world that eat rice but have vitamin A deficiency. We have thousands. I want to say even over 1 million kids a year maybe are going, I can't remember the exact statistic, it's certainly in the thousands, are going blind from vitamin A deficiency.
But I read that this technology, the golden rice technology, I heard it takes 12 bowls of that rice for someone to eat in order to get their daily amount of
Really?
vitamin A that they're trying to promote.
Well,
I mean, I guess
they
it's
may
better
have been
than
the
none,
first
but-
one. I think there was a couple
Oh,
versions.
next
There may have
one's-
been a new one that was better.
The other problem
But-
with that is that Monsanto still owns 90% of these patents. This isn't coming from our land grant institutions here in the United States, where our universities, release these and it's public property. Monsanto is actually actively,
there's
trying to get a profit out of this from poor farmers in the third world, because they're trying to plant this rice and they're trying to actually get a profit out of it. Actually, farmers in the third world are losing because of this technology.
Well, that's the problem I have, is sort of with the intellectual property rights that corporations have over genetic information. So we have these genes they'll identify, or this technology to identify genes and to transfer genes or whatever. And these corporations will hoard that information and that intellectual property, so they'll have a competitive advantage for profit. But it seems like if there is some potential benefit there, and you have these processes and this information open to the public for academic research and to make sure that it's very safe, and to if it does have some potential benefit for could make organic agriculture better in some way in terms of making it more productive or something, as long as
And creating cultivars that have more yields or have drought resistance,
Right, drought
cold
resistance, a huge
flood
one.
resistance,
Yeah,
just anything.
Yeah, I mean there are potential genes that they've identified to help make crops that are way more drought resistant. That's a huge issue.
But the thing is, all the funding is going to the private
Right.
businesses, which are not focusing on that. They're using narrow genetic bases for their staple crops that they're doing. Whereas public breeding programs like nonprofits and other organizations, they have smaller budgets for their funding, but yet they're trying to address other issues in terms of global crop security for all nations, depending on their climate
Right.
and bioregion.